Lurgan is a town of about 25,000 people, about 20 miles away from Belfast. Currently, it's a very segregated town. There is a line, not a wall, but a mental line down the town that separates one community from the other. If you go back to the 1960s, I wouldn't say that it was integrated, but there were pockets of Protestants and Catholics living all over the town. Since that time, the town has become very, very segregated, almost more so. It does mean that there's certain areas in the town that are not maybe hugely safe for the young people. So what our project is doing is coming into that context where the people of the town and the young people that we're working with will have a mental dividing line. So the essence and the simplest form of the shared education programme is to give them opportunities to cross that barrier, to meet people that they wouldn't otherwise meet, and through that then to develop relationships, understanding, and indeed in many cases friendships that will transcend that mental barrier in the town. So we travelled all around the town, mapped out various places that would allow us to explore all arts and parts of the town. And the young people, when they were there, were collecting these data points about how they felt. We wanted to look at public space, how the young people felt there in areas that could potentially be called shared space. But also then into the residential areas, those very segregated residential areas. When we came back in to the school after the survey had finished, and of course the power of the software allows us to access that data immediately, looking at the patterns and immediately exploring the attitudes expressed by both themselves and people from the other community. So it really allowed a very honest exploration and a very eye-opening exploration as the students from both sides of the town discovered how each other felt about the other area, and it led to some very interesting conversations that really drove forward mutual understanding. I think that is hope writ large. I think this is the future being created now. This is about celebrating difference. This is about pluralism in its truest sense, tolerance as it should be, friendship. And this is the past informing the present, but the future being written now by the friendships these young people are making.
The Troubles was a time in Northern Ireland where there was conflict between Catholics and Protestants over the control of land and space. And the Troubles hit Lurgan really hard back in the 1960s and the late 1990s. Essentially, Catholic and Protestant students don't mix and the town remains very spatially divided. We thought it would be really interesting as part of our skills programme to get together with some teachers and geography students in Northern Ireland, in the town of Lurgan, to map how they feel at certain locations within their towns. What we wanted to find out was how spatially divided the town actually was based on the lived experience of these teenagers. Traditionally, to do a survey like this in a geography class, people would use pen and paper, but with ArcGIS for Schools we were able to basically hand this technology into the hands of these students using Survey 123. We got together with 45 students, geography teachers from 3 schools. So there was Lurgan College, which was a Protestant school, Lurgan Junior High, another Protestant school, and St. Ronan's College, a Catholic school. And we spent a whole morning touring around 15 different locations in the town of Lurgan to map how these students felt, their level of safety and their level of comfort at these emotive locations around their town. Students felt really comfortable, like the local church or the school. But then when you got into some of the other areas, places that were symbols of what happened with the violence and the troubles of the past, that some students that were doing the survey were so scared they didn't even want to get off the bus. Some of the students said they would never have been on the same bus together only for the project. I think it was about finding this common understanding through the project that's really been useful for them and helped them to make new friends through the use of this technology as well. What's been really inspiring for me is that Esri has invested in education and in the schools programme, so basically giving our technology to every pupil on the island of Ireland. And we can see from Lurgan itself that once you actually give students a voice and a platform to go and talk about the things that matter to them, that great things can happen.
I work in a town called Lurgan, which is pretty much right in the middle of Northern Ireland as you look, and I've been a police officer for 9.5 years. We had in Northern Ireland what we termed the Troubles, And essentially what that was sectarian infighting between the mainly Catholic nationalist community and the mainly Protestant unionist community. Essentially fighting over who Northern Ireland belonged to. There are still divisions out there for no reason other than that's just the way it's been. That to me is heartbreaking. I think it narrows people's possibilities, it narrows horizons, it stops children from actually experiencing the world as it is and gives a very fake and quite hardened outlook on life. So when Alistair first told me about the partnership with Esri, I thought that, you know, when we talk about building bridges in communities, that needs to start right at the grassroots, and if we can't start that in people's homes, then starting it in schools is, you know, is the next best thing. We discussed how we could really effectively use this to challenge the kids and to get the conversations and the dialogue going. What we came up with together was the idea of plotting different points around Lurgan. I think 15 different points we came up with from both communities and the town centre, looking at working class unionist areas, working class nationalist areas, slightly more affluent areas on both sides, the shared spaces, the antisocial behaviour hotspots, the places that a lot of these kids' peers would be and go and have fairly hardened views on, taking them hopefully out of their comfort zone to places they haven't been, also to places of worship from both sides of the community, and just simply asking that question, how do you feel about this place? Let's start watching these kids learn about each other in a new way and learning that there's far more that brings them together than should ever be allowed to separate them, and how they can use this technology and use the surveys that we've done and measure sentiment as they've done. That is how they can build the change for the future. That is how they can spread this message of hope to their peers, to their generation, and, you know what, even to the generations to come and the generations previously.